I will be giving a brief review of the Elizabethan era. The Elizabethan era is known as the golden period of English history and English literature. This was the period from 1558 to 1603. And this was the first time that an entire epoch of 45 years was named after a queen, suggesting the importance that is attributed to the rule of the powerful Queen Elizabeth I. Elizabeth was the daughter of King Henry VIII and his second wife, the lovely Anne Boleyn. Henry was never expected to become the King of England. It was his elder brother, Arthur, who was being prepared to become the King of England. The untimely and unexpected death of Arthur led to paving the way for Henry becoming the next King of England. Henry, when he was young, was handsome, charming, articulate, intelligent, and he was very popular among the English people. He was also known as a playboy. He had multiple affairs with a number of women, and when he came to the throne, he was forced, or rather he was made to marry Catherine of Aragon, the Spanish Catholic princess. Catherine of Aragon was actually engaged to Henry's elder brother, Arthur, but his death led to the marriage between Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII. They had a comparatively happy marriage which lasted for around 15 years, and during this period, Catherine of Aragon gave birth to a daughter who would later on become Queen Mary I of England. Henry was unhappy that he did not have any sons to carry on his line of succession, and this was one of the reasons why he decided to divorce Catherine of Aragon. Moreover, he had a roving eye. He was a very lustful man, and his eyes had fallen on the beautiful Anne Boleyn. He had to divorce Catherine of Aragon to marry Anne Boleyn, and for this he required permission from the Pope, who was the head of the Roman Catholic Church. At this point of time, England was a Catholic nation and Henry himself was a practicing Catholic. So he sought the permission of Pope Clement VII. The Pope actually dilly-dallied with the permission issue. Finally, he refused to give Henry permission to divorce Catherine of Aragon and marry Anne Boleyn. Henry was enraged. He was a very arrogant and imperious man. He decided that he would go ahead with his decision of marrying Anne Boleyn. He got his marriage to Catherine of Aragon annulled, and he also declared the independence of the Church of England from the Roman Catholic Church in Rome. He declared himself the supreme head of the Anglican Church. Thus, the Church of England became an independent body under Henry VIII. He gave himself a divorce and he got married to Anne Boleyn. They had a daughter, Elizabeth I, and Elizabeth was born in September 1533. Anne Boleyn had a number of miscarriages. Henry was again disappointed that he did not have a son, because there was no precedent of a woman ever having become the Queen of England. So he started looking for somebody else to carry on his line of succession, and he found that he had to divorce Anne Boleyn. Henry VIII decided to get married to Jane Seymour. He wanted an excuse to dispose of Anne Boleyn. He accused her of adultery and of having committed high treason. She was thrown into the Tower of London and executed within 4 days. At this point of time, Elizabeth was only 3 years old. Anne Boleyn had been a very unpopular figure in England. Many people called her a witch because she had bewitched their popular and much loved king, Henry VIII. On the other hand, Catherine of Aragon was somebody who attracted a lot of devotion. She was very popular, and everyone considered her to be the rightful Queen of England. Henry VIII had a son with Jane Seymour, the young prince Edward. Edward would go on to become King Edward IX of England. Henry died in 1547, and before his death he had made clear the line of succession. He would be succeeded by Edward, followed by Mary, his eldest daughter, and then of course Elizabeth I. There was a brief time in between when Elizabeth had been declared illegitimate and her father had been extremely indifferent to her. But she had been taken care of by Henry's sixth wife, Catherine Parr. Henry VIII died in 1547, and Prince Edward became Edward VI of England. He was just a 9-year-old boy who had taken up the responsibility of ruling England when England was going through a very tumultuous period in its history. He was a Protestant. He ruled for 3 years and then he died of sickness. There are reports that he was probably poisoned. The next in line was Elizabeth's elder half-sister, Mary. She became Queen Mary I of England, or the infamous Bloody Mary. As soon as she came to power, she wanted England to return to the Catholic fold, and she was very vigorous in her implementation of Catholic views. All those who refused to convert to Catholicism were murdered. More than 300 Protestants were murdered during her reign. They were burnt at the stake, leading to the famous moniker Bloody Mary. Mary also made another mistake. She got married to Philip II of Spain. He was a Catholic. The English, famously independent-minded, did not like a Spanish ruler. This was one of the reasons for her unpopularity. She died in 1558, and Elizabeth, who was not expected to ever become the Queen of England, became the Queen of England. She was the last of the Tudor monarchs and the most important of the Tudor monarchs. Elizabeth came to the throne when she was 25 years old. She inherited an England which was going through a very troublesome phase. England had been Protestant under Edward VI. It became Catholic under Mary I. Elizabeth was a confirmed Protestant, but she was also a very pragmatic and practical woman. She maintained equidistance from all the 3 religious factions in England, that is, the Puritans, the Protestants, and the Catholics. 2 things that she did to restore peace and stability in England were the Act of Uniformity and the Act of Settlement. The Act of Settlement, whereby she was declared the supreme governor of the Church of England, and all the churchmen had to pay allegiance to her. The Act of Uniformity, whereby the Book of Common Prayer was brought back. That is, this was a prayer book in English which was introduced in the time of Edward VI. It had been banned during the period of Queen Mary. Elizabeth restored the 1552 edition of the Book of Common Prayer. She made it compulsory for everyone to attend church. There were fines to be paid if someone did not attend church on a particular day. She declared very clearly that she was married to her people, and although there were rumors of multiple romances, she never got married. She was very determined that her priority was to restore peace and stability in England. The 45-year period of her rule, that is from 1558 to 1603, was a period of remarkable prosperity, progress, and advance. This happened because this was a time when there was no plague, when England was not warring with its powerful enemies like France and Spain, and the Queen herself ensured that there would be peace, prosperity, and advancement in her country. The greatest challenge that she faced was the Spanish Armada. The reason behind the Spanish Armada being her execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary, Queen of Scots, was her cousin. She was a Catholic, and she was the center of numerous assassination plots against Elizabeth I. Under compulsion, Mary had to be thrown into the Tower of London. Elizabeth spent some time before deciding to order the beheading of Mary, Queen of Scots. This happened in 1587. Philip II of Spain decided that this was a harsh step and England should be brought back to the Catholic fold. He decided to attack England. The most powerful European navy of that time was the Spanish Armada. The Spanish Armada set sail for England to attack England and bring back England to the Catholic fold. Elizabeth rode to Tilbury, where she spoke to her soldiers. She said, "I may have the feeble body of a woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a man, and that too of a king of England." The storm and the fighting ships and Elizabeth's words inspired the English naval fleet. The English naval fleet was able to defeat the Spanish Armada. This not only restored, it reinforced Elizabeth's godlike stature in the eyes of her people. She was a highly educated woman, fluent in more than 6 languages, and she was someone who delighted in translating works from Latin to English and from English to Latin. So all these things together contributed to her godlike status. She was called Gloriana. She was called the Virgin Queen because she remained unmarried till her death. Her defeat of the Spanish Armada further reinforced her stature, and this period after the defeat of the Spanish Armada was a period when England was very, very prosperous, and it became a place where the best of literature, poetry, drama existed. Elizabethan literature, Elizabethan poetry especially, saw the beginning of the lyric form of poetry. Thomas Wyatt and Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, were the two people who introduced the sonnet form into England in the 16th century. The sonnet was a very popular form of poetry in Italy, and it had been popularized by Petrarch in Italy. These two men, Wyatt and Surrey, they believed that the sonnet must be tweaked and adjusted in order to suit the English tongue. They believed that English was as good as any of the classical languages like French or Latin or Greek. Shakespeare was the one who popularized the English sonnet. His sonnets were addressed to the mysterious dark lady and the fair youth. The sonnets by Petrarch, Dante and Philip Sidney were addressed to paragons of virtue, but Shakespeare's sonnets dealt with lust, infidelity, homoeroticism and all the various human weaknesses and failings. The two most important poets of this period were Edmund Spenser and Sir Philip Sidney. Edmund Spenser's most famous work is The Faerie Queene, a poem of great lyrical beauty which was a celebration of Elizabeth I. There are various references to Elizabeth I in Faerie Queene. His next important work was of course The Shepherd's Calendar, which he dedicated to Sir Philip Sidney. The next important poet is Sir Philip Sidney. He was a courtier, a soldier, a statesman, a poet, a critic, a writer. He was what you can call the flower of English manhood. His most famous works are Astrophel and Stella, a famous sonnet sequence, and of course his work of literary criticism, The Defense of Poetry or An Apology for Poetry. Elizabethan drama was something where you have all these stalwarts, the giants like William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, Thomas Dekker and Ben Jonson. A 1-hour lecture would not suffice to do justice to the craft of William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare wrote 36 plays. He wrote plays in all the genres, that is, he wrote histories, he wrote comedies, tragic comedies, romances. William Shakespeare's most famous tragedies are Othello, Macbeth, King Lear, Antony and Cleopatra. The next important playwright that I will be talking about is Christopher Marlowe. The plays written by Christopher Marlowe were different from the plays written by Shakespeare because they were moral dramas. Christopher Marlowe's drama had poetic beauty. For example, his description of Helen in his most important play, Dr. Faustus, goes thus: "Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium?" Christopher Marlowe's most important contribution to English literature and English drama happens to be the unforgettable characters of Mephistopheles and Dr. Faustus. The next important playwright is of course Ben Jonson, who wrote comedies. Elizabethan theatre. Theatre during the Elizabethan period was highly sophisticated, it was technically advanced, and it was the most popular form of entertainment. Till the Elizabethan period, there were travelling troupes which did not have a permanent stage, but Elizabeth herself was responsible for setting up playhouses because she loved to watch plays, she appreciated drama. The playhouses of this period were located on the south bank of the River Thames because the authorities considered playwriting, acting, producing to be disrespectful. So, most of the important theatres of this time like the Swan, the Rose, the Theatre, the Curtain and the Globe were located on the south side of the Thames River. The theatres of this period were made of wood and they were shaped like the English alphabet O. They had 3-tiered roofed galleries, they were open to the elements, and the stage was actually quite small because at a particular time only 12 actors could stand on the stage. The stage projected onto the audience. There was a roof over the stage, and the area in front of the stage was known as the pit, where maximum number of people used to stand and watch the play. Now, the standees, they paid a penny to watch the play, and Shakespeare referred to them as the groundlings. Shakespeare actually incorporated a number of dialogues in order to appease the standees. The Elizabethan audience was not used to a change of scenery, so they did not miss it. Change of scenery or change of background was indicated through the dialogue or by holding a placard. The indication that a particular show was to be held was indicated by hoisting a flag on top of the theatre, so that people would know that a performance was slated for that day. William Shakespeare's theatre, the Globe, had been constructed by James Burbage for his company called Lord Chamberlain's Men. The Elizabethan era was remarkable for travel and exploration. It was actually the beginning of the colonial period in the sense that Elizabeth herself encouraged a lot of activities related to exploration. Sir Francis Drake was the first Englishman to complete the circumnavigation of the globe. The next important explorer was of course John Hawkins, who was an important slave trader and who was involved in bringing slaves from Africa and taking them to America. He was also appointed as the Vice Admiral of the English naval fleet against the Spanish Armada. Then of course we have Sir Walter Raleigh, a statesman, a courtier, a poet, one of the favorites of Queen Elizabeth I, and he was the person who was responsible for establishing the colony of Virginia on the eastern coast of North America. Thus, the Elizabethan era was a period when the Queen herself inspired and influenced her people to be the best, to do the best. Through her appearance, through her actions, she was a great inspiration for her people. She was the most powerful queens of English history, and she died a virgin. With her death in March 1603, the Elizabethan era, a golden period in history, comes to an end. Thank you.